TJ, great. Okay, we are all here. With that, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Can you take the roll? Yeah, for some reason I couldn't remember that. Yeah, go ahead.
Bajan,
Here.
Clegg,
Here.
Halliburton,
Here.
Sanchez,
Here.
Thompson,
Here.
Woodings,
Here.
all present.
All right, first up, we've got Travis Black might be on Zoom with interim budget changes. There you go. There you are.
I'm here, Mayor, if everyone can hear and see me.
Yes.
All right, great. So just to quickly run through, there's 4 IBCs for today. And most of them relate simply to moving money around as opposed to new dollar requests. So first up is the in IT, we currently have an activity for ERP system upgrades, and there's about $1.1 million in that activity right now that we want to separate out into 2 separate activities. One which will specifically focus on the due diligence related to ERP systems for DFA and HR, and then another one that will focus on kind of other citywide ERP systems. So it's just moving those existing dollars to these 2 new activities. The second one is the actual only new money request, and this one was highlighted. It's the legal case management system. It'd be an $820,000 request. This was highlighted at the end of the year as a potential use for year-end funds. And this is to upgrade the legal's case management system. Currently, their criminal system is what they use for case management being phased out, no longer supported. And so this is to find a replacement for that and simultaneously add a civil case management component to it. So it's taking the existing criminal, adding the civil. And so there is an incremental ongoing base cost to this in addition to the $820,000 upfront capital cost. The approximate estimates, we don't have the exact figures yet, but the new system would cost about $145,000 a year versus $50,000 for the current criminal system. The third IBC is for a courier van for the library system. This is not a new dollar request. It's simply when we created the budget, we missed creating the authority to transfer money from the ILS Heritage Fund into the capital fund. So the expense has already been reflected in the budget that you saw and approved last summer. This is just simply a matter of transferring the money from Heritage over to capital. And then likewise, there's another kind of shuffling of money for the Hawkins Range development. So this is that 400 acre parcel that we purchased, I believe it was in 2016, that currently sits undeveloped as just pure open space. So this is to put in trailhead with parking and restroom. I do want to note that the IBC references 45 vehicles would be how large the parking area is. That's not yet determined. It could be somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 instead. But regardless, it's to develop that trailhead and a 6.5 mile loop trail that would use kind of the new methods that we've been talking about recently, which is one-way trails, seasonality to it for conservation purposes. So it would not be open in the winter. And that's, again, no new dollars, but recognizing a grant from the state, transferring some money, impact fees from existing activity to this activity, as well as using some funds in the Heritage Fund. So those are the 4 IBCs for today. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to attempt to answer them.
Madam Mayor,
Sure. Yes,
Well-
go ahead.
it's awfully nice to see the case management software finally coming around. It's been a long time. I know legal's been waiting to figure out which one they're going to use. So glad to see that. I have one question on the restroom at the trailhead, and I don't know if anyone from Parks is here who could answer. I just wonder, is that going to be just a porta potty or is it going to be a permanent outhouse?
my understanding, and I don't know if anyone from Parks is on, I did have folks from IT on just in case there were more questions about the IT components today. But on that, I'm assuming that it's more like one of the Portland Loo type systems that we've used elsewhere. However, I can check with Sarah and revert back to you and give you the answer to that one.
I'm just wondering for maintenance reasons, so.
And that is one thing that Sarah did note today, is that the existing maintenance costs or not existing, the future maintenance costs, M&O costs are expected to be minimal and can probably be absorbed within the existing budget. Obviously there's some disposables that go along with some of these restrooms, but M&O costs, ongoing base M&O costs will be de minimis.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, it looks like no other questions. With that, I would move that we approve the interim budget changes as presented.
Second, we have a motion and a second. Clerk, will you call the roll, please?
Woodings,
Yes.
Bajent,
Yes.
Clegg,
Yes,
Halliburton,
Yes.
Sanchez,
yes,
Thompson.
Yes.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. All right,
Thank
next
you.
up. Yeah, good to see you, Travis. Thank you. Next up, Sean, are you covering the industrial park? Great. The council president had asked for a presentation update from Sean Keithley on the city's industrial park and the strategies out there. And so he is here today to provide that.
Screen share here.
there we go.
Okay, thank you and good afternoon, Mayor and members of the council. It's a pleasure to be here today and have the opportunity to present on this topic. We're talking about the Eisenman industrial area and giving an update on our progress over the past approximately 2.5 years since that development agreement was signed. So just a quick overview of the area that we're talking about. It is the generally the area in yellow, which are city-owned properties that are part of a development agreement with the Boyer Company, again, signed in March of 2018. The purple properties that are shown there are also are not included in the development agreement with Boyer, but are city-owned properties, just for reference. And if it's not already apparent, this is an area that's approximately 4 miles as a crow flies southeast of the airport, proximate to South Eisenman Road and I-84. So some background on this, the project and the industrial park. Again, this was a development agreement signed with the Boyer Company for approximately 140 acres of city-owned property in March of 2018. All of that property is zoned industrial and was intended for the use of the development of industrial and related uses. The agreement allows the Boyer Company the exclusive right to develop that property subject to specific performance requirements spread over a 25-year threshold. Those performance requirements are related to square footages of improved building space on those properties. For each development phase that's initiated in the park, a separate tract ground lease is initiated. And that ground lease is a term of 50 years, as stated in the DA, with optional 2 10-year terms. And per the DA, the city is also entitled to a share of proceeds from these ground lease agreements that amount to 12.5% of net operating revenue. And that is defined in a fair amount of detail in the DA and relates to the investment that is made by the developer, the Boyer Company, and their subsidiaries in each phase, and the opportunity to gain revenue after that, after all of their operating expenses are covered. So basically, once they have realized their return on investment, then that operating revenue portion starts to flow back to the city. And I'll just state that one of the objectives that was included in the original agreement as part of the presentation to council is stated to be the catalytic nature of potential industrial and commercial projects as a primary objective of the DA, with the operating revenue perhaps being secondary to that. Brief overview of the development timeline. In March 2018, the DA was signed. January 2019, the Gateway East Urban Renewal District took effect, administered by Capital City Development Corporation. And approximately 9 months later, in October 2019, the first development phase was completed. And that phase was subsequently leased, or at least a major portion of it, to Verdi Fulfillment, a local Boise company that nearly doubled their existing warehouse space. And just recently, the balance of that facility was leased to another local Treasure Valley firm, Northwest Fulfillment. 2020, the second phase was initiated for a 280,000 square foot distribution facility, which will be occupied and operational by September of 2021. And this year, a third building design efforts are underway, and that building will be approximately 180,000 square feet on the parcel just to the east of the Wingco Distribution Center. To summarize the development that has taken place to date, approximately 450,000 square feet have been constructed on city-owned property, and this includes the approximately 280,000 square feet currently underway. This includes about 50 million or slightly more of investment in new building construction, including that in progress portion, as well as approximately 1.26 million of obligated public improvements invested by CCDC in the urban renewal district. And I'll just note that that's for the urban renewal district in general, not specifically this portion, but as public improvements, they by that nature benefit this area as well. And in keeping with its intention as a catalytic development, there are several other major projects underway nearby. I've included a couple photos of the recent developments on the city-owned property. To the left is the 280,000 square foot facility, and to the right is the completed approximately 170,000 square foot fulfillment center. Brief overview of the infrastructure investments in the area. Of course, Gateway East URD provides significant funding for public improvements that are eligible. There are also a number of major infrastructure investments underway for which design analysis is being completed for future projects. This includes ongoing and cooperative efforts between the Boyer Company, the City of Boise, Ada County Highway District, CCDC, and our other key partners. And the overall plan for future development phases is currently under refinement. As part of the development agreement, a overall conceptual plan was included with the understanding that development was intended to be in accordance with that plan, but could change, of course, as specific projects took place. And as one last note, a letter of commitment was recently signed by the Boyer Company to build and install certain improvements, infrastructure improvements, as a condition of approval for a recorded subdivision plat that TBD to take place in the future on a portion of the development area to the west of the current phase being developed. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
And Mayor?
Go ahead.
Well, thanks for being here, Sean. I just wanted to make sure that other council members understood the work that was going on out there, since many of them were not around when we signed the original agreement with Boyer. So question for you, now that a couple of the building, well, one of them is up and occupied, another one is soon to be occupied. How soon do we expect some of that net profit to come into the Economic Development Division?
Mayor McClain, Councilmember Clegg, excellent question. So I have posed that question to our development partner at Boyer and intend to, in accordance again with the DA and the open book policy that we're entitled to since the first phase has been completed, to take a close look at when those funds will start flowing back to the city. So our development partner is aware of our intention to start working on this and laying out a potential schedule for when that might happen.
And just for everyone else, that money, at least previously, we had always assigned that money to the Economic Development Division to do more economic development with. So we may have a budget decision before us at some point, probably not tomorrow, but depending on how much that is. And then related question, not quite to do with this, but of course, the lease of the old Shopko facility and the request for a rail spur on the rail that we own. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Certainly, Mayor McClain, Council President Clegg. Well, some good news to share there. So the recent addition to Boise of the AZEC company will include use of that railroad spur. And that portion of the railroad that's connected to that spur is owned by the city of Boise. And the expected number of carloads has not been exactly determined, but I've heard quoted that perhaps 30 carloads per month, something in that neighborhood, could be expected once operations fully ramped up. Again, to be confirmed, but that's certainly good news for use of that city-owned portion of the railroad, and could provide opportunities for, I suppose, a closer attention to be paid for ongoing maintenance of that track.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Go ahead.
just a quick question. The 12.5%, is there a sunset for the time the city receives that? Or since the city owns the property, is it kind of in perpetuity?
The 12.5% flows for the term of the lease. So, and that's, again, net operating expenses of the developer. So as long as the lease is in effect and those operating expenses have been, that threshold has been met, then that the revenue stream will continue to flow to the city.
And then Madam Mayor, quick follow-up. That's a 25-year lease. Did I read that? Or what was the lease on there?
Madam Mayor, Council Member Halliburton, the agreement with the Boyer Company is in the development agreement, a 25-year agreement. However, the ground leases that are assigned as part of each phase are for 50 years plus 2 10-year terms.
Perfect. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Sean, one of the reasons we were also excited about having the Gateway East Industrial Park was because in a lot of ways, Boise is lacking on those sort of middle income jobs. Are we keeping track of the types of jobs that are being added out there and what the economic impact is both on the individuals who are working there and also on the city as a whole?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, excellent question. For each development phase that is considered by the city and by the Boyer Company, we have made a collaborative effort to understand in detail the type of project that is being contemplated and the type of, for example, the type of employment opportunities that will be added to the economy as a result. So I do not have firm numbers yet on wages, for example, for this latest phase, but have confidence that those will reach an acceptable level for for average county, for example, average median wages for the county, and will be quality jobs for the city of Boise.
Great, thank you. Any opportunity to quantify that so that we can report it out would be really cool. Would be neat to track.
I'll certainly do my best to track that down, Councilmember Woodings. Thank you.
Madam Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
thank you. Thank you so much for the presentation, Sean. Just wanted to revisit the conversations that we've had about ways that we can expand opportunities for underrepresented populations, underrepresented businesses that could participate in all the opportunities that we have here in the city of Boise. So Just wanted to urge you to remember that as you move forward on this, but this is a great bit of information to have today.
Madam Mayor, Council President Pro Tem Sanchez certainly will do so, and thank you very much for your input.
All right, Sean, it looks like that's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and next up, we have Chief Niemeyer for an update on Station 5.
Mayor, Council, good evening. Thank you. It's great to see some of you in person.
Hey, Chief, just a second. I shouldn't have said hey. I want to make sure that online they can hear you. I can't tell if the mic's on or not.
Check, check.
Can people online can hear? Great. All right. Because I just hear you
Great.
naturally, so I wanted to make sure they could hear you too.
I'll
We're
boom my
good.
voice a little bit too. It is great to be here tonight. We're here to present what we feel is a very exciting project. This has been discussed for some time, which is why you'll see Sean Wilson and I tag teaming on this presentation. Sean certainly has some of the history of this project before I arrived, and then we'll talk about also my involvement starting 4 months ago to what we feel today is a project that has great community benefit, great benefit to our downtown businesses, great benefit to our fire department, and also helps to meet a strategic initiative as we move forward as well. So with that, I'm going to turn over to Sean to start the agenda and some of the history behind this.
Thank you. Mayor, council members, thanks for having me back again to get an update on Fire Station 5. For the agenda, I wanted to go through a little background, just what we talked about last year in June 2020, and then recap on the direction that we heard to go and study more of the station, a little bit about what we found and sort of the investigation results and kind of the next steps from this point forward. So just real quick, our station inventory, this is kind of the list of station and our assets. Fire Station 5 is the one with the dashed circle, kind of in the downtown core between Station 1 and 18. Of all of our station assets, it is the oldest asset, approximately 70 years old. And taking a little closer snapshot in the vicinity map here, it's right where Front and Myrtle come together across the street from Road Skate Park, right where the connector starts to elevate. To the west, we have some development. To the east, there's some new housing that just went in, and to the south is the skate park. A little bit about the site. It sits between 15th and 16th, adjacent to Front Street there. The site itself is about 0.85 acres. The right side of the site is mostly just pavement, dirt pavement, not very developed. We own the entire site except for this little square right here, which is owned by ACHD. It's a signalization box. And on the west side of the site, of course, is where the existing fire station sits. So kind of the background on why we got to study in Station 15, there's kind of three main components. This condition of the station, programming with the station, facilities programming, so the types of spaces that are within the station, and then the level of service with the fire station. And so from a condition perspective, we went through it pretty detailed, and most of the systems like mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems are past their useful life. A lot of the architectural systems are coming due on it. One of the bigger ones is the structural system for essential facilities. So it was built to, current code at the time, so 50s code, which is substantially different from new seismic code today. And so there would be it's quite a bit behind with structural code. And then kind of the last piece with the condition assessment we typically look at is accessibility. In the 1950s, there was no ADA standards. And so just access to the building itself has quite a bit of accessibility challenges.
I think this is where I'm going to jump in. We wanted to create not too much tennis back and forth with this, but this is a slide that I wanted to talk about a little bit. As I visited Station 5, one of the concerns that I had looking at how that station is currently laid out and the age is we don't have a dedicated extractor or decon room. And in today's world, we're trying to reduce carcinogen exposure at every turn that we can. Not having a dedicated room to take soiled clothing, soil equipment, turnouts that have been exposed to soot and ash and et cetera, and wash those, and then subsequently take those from that washing room that's dedicated and into a room that has its own controlled environment and airflow. We call that a clean room, a clean turnout room. What we've found over the years is that even though we wash those, and we can wash them up to twice, those turnouts, they'll still off gas after you've washed them. And so to have that dedicated room where there's a dedicated airflow that off gassing can occur and really eliminate those carcinogens to our firefighters is very important. We've incorporated those rooms into our previous remodels or rebuilds. Shop space also, you'll find our firefighters do a lot of work throughout the day that doesn't need to go to public works, some small work around the stations on the apparatus. To have a shop room to at least have some tool space, et cetera. We don't have that right now at Station 5. The other question that we had to ask ourselves is, what does the future look like? That's our busiest fire station downtown. It will continue to be the busiest fire station for quite a while. And even COVID has put some weird numbers to everything, but that was the busiest firehouse in the entire state. And so knowing that expansion, that growth will occur, what's the future need there? One of the things that has been discussed heavily in the past is some form of quick response unit to handle a lot of the medical calls that are going on, especially on the weekends. And so looking at what does that look like? What is that potential expansion? How do we build a station for the future, knowing that probably will build out a little bit? That was also some of the programming that we've discussed.
So the result from what we looked at in June of last year when I presented was the direction we received, review additional ideas. And when we looked at it initially, we really focused kind of just on the fire station, not on an integrated site that could be developed. And so the task that we got was, hey, look at it as a full site development. Is there a way to horizontally integrate with other, co-locate with other city priorities like affordable housing, but kind of think outside the box on using this site? The other thing we heard was we have a new chief coming on board, so let's not jump into a conclusion until we get input from the new chief. So we kind of expand the conversation a bit, didn't look at it just as a public works fire anymore. We worked with planning and development services and talked about, hey, what would be possible on this site from a development perspective? What part of the site with the adjacencies? Got a lot of input from our previous director and Cody in our planning. We met with leadership on site to review the existing site, kind of discuss different uses, how they might look on the site. And then really what we did is just kind of launched into an idea development. And initially in the idea development, it's more of a test to fit analysis. So we're trying to see, okay, what can we fit on the site? How can we do a site integration and really focus on kind of maximizing the potential use of the site for other priorities. And so just a quick note, we have a lot of figures coming up. Everything's really creative renderings. We haven't designed anything up to this point. So that's really kind of, when we talk next steps, kind of the next step. So first thing we did is just kind of plugged a bunch of boxes on a site and worked with planning and said, what can we really squeeze on here? How much of a housing unit based on adjacencies, based on where it's at relative to the city? And what we're finding is you can put a lot on this site. It's 0.85 acres, but a lot could be fit on the site. After we started putting just sort of boxes down to understand what the potential is for something like affordable housing, we started looking at how would you integrate the site to kind of horizontally integrate it. So besides housing, is there opportunity for community space where there could be interaction with fire and other uses on the site? There could be green space. There's lots of opportunities. I was kind of surprised actually how much you can get on 0.85 acres. And with that, after we got done with the boxes, we looked at it and we decided, hey, we need a really good sort of creative rendering of what the potential is for this site. So we tasked the architect with coming up with this.
So that's where I come back in. You mentioned wait for the chief to get her. And so as we did some site visits, we talked to the firefighters, we understood the history of this project. What Chief Carboni, our logistics chief, showed me was some drawings that had been done in 2017 of a potential design for a fire station. It was just a standalone fire station. And I said, well, can we engage Rice Fergus and see if they can do a conceptual drawing of what this might look like with the housing behind it and really put this whole project together visually to have a good conversation around it. So as you look at the firehouse itself, we would love to incorporate some of the old traditional feel to it. You see the brick facade on the front where the apparatus come out. We have old pictures from the early 1900s of stations that had that look to it. We feel that that's a great representation of this downtown area. In the right-hand corner there, you'll see a bunch of glassware, and behind that would be an open history of our fire department, where we have some brick behind it from this station currently. We have some equipment shown that we've traditionally used over the years, and really make it a community engagement aspect right there on that corner. And also creating some community space where we can engage our community downtown right here at this firehouse. We take pride in rolling up the doors at our firehouse, especially in the spring and summer, to engage with our community. And we feel that this is another great opportunity to do just that. So that's one perspective. And then there's another perspective from the other side if you're looking from Rhodes Park. This site location where our current station is the best location. We did take a look at 15th. The challenge there is we would have to add significant signalization, as that's a one-way going north. It's a blind spot for us coming out. So that didn't necessarily make sense. And also the housing aspect made a lot more sense on the east side. So the station would basically be rebuilt in the location that it's at right now. We've engaged with our crews down there at 5, and I will tell you, some of them have great sentimental value, and I appreciate that. I've spent my career in firehouses or paramedic houses, and you do develop sentimental value to those because that's where your family is. That's where we eat dinner together and all that, but they understand the need to evolve. They're excited about this project. They think it can be a great win-win project for the fire department, the city, and the community. So with that, we'll turn it back over to Sean. I'll talk briefly. I apologize. This was my slide. The question that was posed to me is, if we have to tear that down, rebuild it, what do we do to ensure response in the downtown core? Our plan A would be to use our logistics site at Americana and get some trailers. It's been done before. It works. And respond out of that logistics site. So we have good, quick downtown coverage. Plan B would be to utilize Station 18 in Garden City, close to that downtown core. We've been able to use that station before when we have remodels, et cetera. So we have two options there. Certainly 1A would be the logistics site right downtown during that construction timeline. And back to Sean.
Next steps, really it's that test to fit kind of proof of concept. And so next step is do a fire station concept. It's about a 5 to 10% design. Update baseline scope and schedule, get a better understanding how long would this take to do, what would the scope look like. The third bullet from a design or an engineer perspective is really important, just better understanding the interface points between the station and the other development that's adjacent to it, and how do we set that up to enable a lot of flexibility with whatever the future development looks like. And then, as Mark mentioned, prepare for operational impacts. And then we've started working with community engagement to better understand kind of the push and pull of information and how that looks. We don't have a plan yet, but the conversations have been going on for a few weeks. And really kind of supporting that site build out. It's that interface area kind of between the station and housing, if that is a community space or parking or what that looks like. But we just want to make sure we build something that gives any future work lots of options and lots of opportunity. And so even though I just said with the concept, we'll figure the timeline out better, I put up a sort of an estimated timeline. This is kind of what my gut says on the project. We'd start the concept around now, go through Q3. So it'd take now through July. Schematic design would start in Q4, fiscal year 21, Q4 plus, I call it, because it would leak into fiscal year 22 a little bit, probably a month or two. The design itself would take about a year approximately. That would take us into early fiscal year 23 where construction would start. And it kind of depends on how the project looks for the construction duration, but could be, it's probably in that 12 to 18 months range for construction. With that, if there are any questions.
Madam Mayor, thank you. Thank you, Sean and Chief Niemeyer. I remember talking through a concept that was similar to this with Chief Doan, like years ago, where he was like, what if we could, do this like multi-use development around the new fire station? And it seemed like a brilliant idea. So it's great to see something come to life that encompasses so much of what the city needs. My question is, Chief Niemeyer, you kind of touched on the emotional connection that people have with the station. What was the process to kind of determine that the existing fire station was not one that was eligible or worthy of rehabilitation?
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Woodings, great question. When I first started engaging on this station, one of the concerns that got brought up right away with the firefighters is they thought a wall in the current station was still an existing wall from the 1900s, from the original station downtown. So that was one of my first concerns is if that's true, that's historical. How do we capture that? We did a full survey. Sean reached out to, I'm gonna forget who you reached out to for the report to identify that wall was built in 1955 when that whole station was torn down and rebuilt. So that created a different perspective for all of us. I think on the engagement, as far as the station and the feelings around a fire station go in a firehouse, we do create memories in those firehouses, but we also understand new memories are going to be born out of the new station. So I think looking at the needs and the concern that we had collectively on, we know what a remodel would cost, but what are the unknowns of that remodel? When we start opening up walls, what are we going to find that will add cost to that? So that's how we arrived at the rebuild as opposed to the remodel in this project.
Wonderful, thank you. I always love to hear the thought process that goes behind, goes into that. And I can imagine that it's probably, having lived through a couple of historic renovations as a child, I appreciate that once you start tearing out walls, sometimes there are things behind those walls. And I can only imagine that is compounded in a place where there's so many moving parts and carcinogens and yeah, so I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Sean and Chief Niemeyer. I really appreciate this. I'm excited about this project quite a bit. And two things real quick on the sentimental component. I certainly agree with that. And as you move forward, I hope you'll look for opportunities to, and you and the firefighters, of course, would know the answer to this, but which pieces within the building or outside of the building could be integrated into the new structure as a way to keep that sentimental, emotional attachment to the old building. And then also, I may or may not know, I've been a supporter for many years of adding a fourth firefighter to the shifts at that station in particular. And I noticed you are looking at the ability to meet larger crew size at the new station. That thought process is including the potential for that fourth firefighter at some point. Thank you.
Madam Mayor, Councilmember Thompson, first of all, on the sentimental value, we absolutely have some, I think, pretty cool ideas on how to incorporate some of the brick that would come off that station. Also, if you go upstairs, there's a very old wood floor that we think can be incorporated as well into some area of the new station. It has a lot of value to those firefighters. As far as the staffing, honestly, that's a part of a much broader conversation we plan to have in the fire department on long-term strategic planning and growth. And that's a conversation we've been talking about. So I can't answer your question right now as far as how the growth of that station
Mark,
looks.
Can you hold on just a
Yep.
second? TJ looks frozen. I just want to make sure that he can hear your answer. TJ, are you able to hear us? Oh, sorry, Councilman Thompson. Yeah, I have a feeling you're going to need to say it again. Councilman Thompson, if you can hear us, please just hang up and call back in. You're totally frozen.
Gosh, it was good the first time. I don't know if I can repeat that.
I know that everybody's interested in the answer, but since the councilman asked it, I just want to make sure that he's able to hear it.
Yeah.
While we're waiting for TJ's face to start moving again or to go away for a little bit, are there other questions for the chief?
Madam Mayor.
Council President Pro Tem, and then I heard somebody else, but I'm not sure who it was. Was it you?
Thank
Oh,
you.
great, you're actually. Go
Thank
ahead.
you, Madam. Thank you so much for the presentation, Chief Niemeyer. Since we're talking about creating new memories, one thing that I have really enjoyed since joining the city is getting to know the women firefighters who are part of our program. And if there's any way for us to acknowledge the women who are amazing and who bring so much to our community, just by being firefighters, being in a very male-dominated profession and representing our city in such a great way and paving the way for other women to choose that as a vocation. It would be great if we could acknowledge them as we build new memories, as you as you pointed out.
Madam Mayor, Council President Pro Tem Sanchez, I couldn't agree more. I think the door is wide open when it comes to what we create in the future and how we capture our memories and how we capture, quite honestly, our traditions. And so I think that door is wide open to that point.
Great. Before we go to Councilmember Halliburton, do you want to pick up on Councilmember Thompson's question? TJ, we stopped the answer so that we could be sure that you were here and hearing it. So the chief
Thank
will
you.
start over at the beginning.
Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. Councilmember Thompson, to the history perspective, we do have some very good ideas. The brick that's existing in the station, we plan on reusing that a little bit in that museum aspect where that might be the backdrop. And then the wood floor from upstairs has a lot of value to the firefighters. A lot of memories there that we can incorporate into that new station as well. As far as the fourth person on the engine, that's a broader staffing conversation that we intend to have within the department and involve council leadership, city leadership, our firefighters as well. That conversation is coming. We've been talking about that for 2 months, but that is a broader conversation that we need to have.
Thank you.
Great. Councilmember Halliburton.
Madam Mayor, thanks for answering TJ's question twice there. I think maybe slightly more poetic the first time, but a job well done both times. My question was somewhat related to TJ's and it was kind of about the expansion of the firefighting facility itself. I love all the creativity that's going on with the other parts of the property. And I guess my question is, as the city grows significantly and hopefully more significantly downtown and more dense, how much does the concept of the fire department or in your conceptual drawings increase in size? And will that size really meet the needs of future demands, or do you see it expanding in different ways to meet those future demands?
Great question. Madam Mayor, Councilmember Halliburton, we believe that the drawing that we have and the work that was done will meet the current and future needs of that area. This drawing or this design would incorporate 10 bedrooms. That's a truck company, an engine company, and something else that we could add in the future to help with the response downtown. That is also, it's a busy firehouse. It's our second due up into the foothills. It's our second due on the river, et cetera. So that's why we envision that expansion and we're designing it to meet that expansion. We know construction gets more expensive the longer you go. So doing it right the first time we believe in, and we feel we have a great design to do that.
Yeah, perfect. I didn't doubt that you did, but I just wanted to make sure that we had fire safety in mind first and then the other fun stuff to go with it as well. So appreciate it.
And Mayor. Welcome, Chief Niemeyer. It's good to see you. So my question is for both you and Sean. Welcome, Sean, as well. It's good to see people in person. Given the schedule that you showed us, it seems possible, and maybe we don't know the answer to this yet, to also put out the RFP for the housing part of it so that the construction could happen at the same time. Is that what we're intending?
Madam Mayor, council members, I think we haven't got to that point. We're talking through that yet, but I think given how long it does take to get everything designed and constructed, there'd probably be opportunity to get those timelines a little bit aligned, but we haven't quite talked about it yet. So,
yeah. Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure it wasn't just the lines we were talking about, it's actually getting the housing underway.
Yeah, and that makes sense that everything would be moving at the same time. So
Okay.
back on that. Anything else?
And Madam Mayor, if I could, I'm one of those people who's a little sentimental about the station, but I have to say I was quite impressed with the concept so far to reflect the history of that time in fire service and reflect the history of the city. So thank you.
Thank you. All right. I think you've got your nod in terms of we think the direction and timing is right. I agree with the council president that it'd be great that we now start talking also about how the housing and the calendar with that comes to fruition. But thanks for being here tonight.
Great. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
All right, next up, we have Courtney Washburn to talk about police oversight. Now, this presentation, I'm going to take off my glasses. Courtney's going to go through today a reflection of what she's heard from council, what I've heard from council, as we've reviewed the community's interest in transparency and accountability. And after hearing from council leadership, both last year and again this year, of the importance of doing this, I asked staff to look at different models that existed and to come to council with the beginning of a conversation that will then draft an ordinance to reflect your thoughts and reaction to the recommendations that they have today. With the goal being that we clearly engage the public in accountability and that there be a model that matches where the city is currently and the values and interests of the city, which I think we all agree our residents value the police, value transparency, and are looking for easy and accessible oversight and accountability. And so with that, Courtney and our team at the city has put a presentation together, and then we'll take your feedback to then begin working on an ordinance.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. So we'll start with police oversight and what we're calling a new model of civilian police accountability. First, I wanted to get some background and ask the council president to chime in, since she has a much better firsthand account of the background and history. Just some key highlights on the slide, but council president, if you would like to chime in.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, council members. So yes, I have been here. I've been certainly part of volunteering for the city since the community ombudsman was created, and was elected to city council the year that we had probably the most trying critical incident that we've had with our police department, and watched how our community ombudsman worked with that critical incident to make sure that the community felt comfortable that the city was doing everything to ensure that A, it didn't happen again, B, that we understood what training needed to happen, and C, that the person involved was well-trained and had done what he understood to be the right response in that situation, given his training. All of those things happened. It was still a very trying time, and I think continues to be for a number of people. But out of that, I learned how important this office is in its visibility. And I think for me, as you know, since then, we've changed models, we have changed directors, and in that change, it's my observation that we missed a little bit of what used to be with the office in terms of the community engagement with it. And so for me, I have watched over the last few years, wondering if there's something we can do with the way that we write the ordinance and administer this office to ensure that A, the community knows it's there, that they're able and willing and understand how to access it and utilize the services that it has. And that B, the office is got the capacity to respond to those requests and those needs by making sure that we understand how the police themselves are performing. I think, you know, given this last week and what's happened in Minnesota, it becomes even more important that we understand how to ensure that our citizens can build trust with our police, and that our police can build trust with our citizens, and that we truly have a community policing model that works for everyone. I think getting this right is a big piece of that.
Madam Mayor, so just a couple highlights on this slide. So as the council president mentioned, the city created an office of community ombudsman in 1999. The clear focus of that office was to investigate complaints of misconduct against Boise City law enforcement and police employees. At that time, it was staffed with a full-time director. The Office of Police Oversight was created in 2015, and there are quite a few added responsibilities to this office, including development of police policies, procedures, training recommendation, and community engagement. And then the director at that time was made a part-time position. And so staff did a whole slew of research, and to make a bunch of information concise, what truly works best with community oversight of police agencies is what fits best for the community. And so the models that have worked the best aren't based on specificity as much as they're based on responding to community needs and where the community felt was the biggest impact and investment of time. So what we have for you is a proposed Office of Police Accountability. And some of the underlying aspects that are informing what we're hoping to do is based on some of your feedback. So with the council president's help, I tried to capture the various things we've heard from you over the last year. So it's clear you want to ensure community members know where to turn. Particularly with the protest over the past year, it became clear that people were really confused if they had a complaint about an officer, where they went, what would happen if you called and complained about a police officer, and kind of what that process was. That you asked to emphasize fairness, transparency, and trust between the community and BPD. You wanted a model that streamlines processes, increased community involvement, and that reviews police conduct. So the review of police conduct is beyond just citizen complaints. We also need a review of police conduct through investigations of internal affairs, which I'll talk about a little more later. Utilize lessons from investigations to facilitate long-term changes. So we really want to focus and take a deep dive on the complaints this office gets and the investigations they conduct to see if we have systemic problems or we just have one-time incidences. Develop more clarity on roles and responsibility of oversight. I think this was a reaction to the expansion of responsibilities in the Office of Police Oversight, that perhaps the expansion of the role created a bigger workload and the focus was a bit taken away from investigations and complaints, and increase the profile of the office. And I believe what I heard is the direction that you want a director the community knows, a full-time position, a face of this office. And I believe that would help increase several things I have mentioned previously, where community members go, what they can expect, kind of more information about what happens and who handles the complaint and what that process looks like. And then analyze the differences between civilian oversight and internal affairs to review the results. For example, if internal affairs came to a conclusion and there was a difference of opinion with civilian oversight, you all should be brought into that conversation, particularly if we're in a position to see if there are trends associated with those. So I'll pause to see if any of you have anything to add here, or feel free to tell me if I got your feedback wrong.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I think that this is a really great list, Courtney. The only thing that I want to add is more like on the physical office side, making sure that it's in a location where people know where to go, where it's very convenient and accessible for folks to walk in. And, you know, on the other side of accessibility, ensuring that we have all of the technology pieces in place so that people can conveniently access the office online.
Madam Mayor.
Was that you?
Yep.
Okay, go ahead. It'll be Councilmember Halliburton, and then I think I heard the President Pro Tem.
You can't see my mouse, so you can't.
No, I
tell if I'm talking or
know.
not. Thank you, Courtney. It looks like you've got a lot of the bullet points that I wanted to see up there. I did have a question just kind of in your mind. What does increased community involvement sort of look like when we talk about this position, and how would they do that?
Madam Mayor, Council Member, So the idea, and we have several, so we would return to you with a community engagement plan, and I'll get ahead of myself, but then repeat myself again, is to put the responsibility of community engagement with the Office of Community Engagement. And in my mind, and again, this is just me speaking for myself, I think we want to advertise this office in places where we believe are likely to be complaints. So I'm thinking schools where we have SROs or other outreach opportunities where victims go to find support, so that there's a much bigger awareness of this office. And then also by adding community awareness to the portfolio of the Office of Community Engagement, it would be more consistent and just part of what the cities do. I think isolating the community engagement to the office just doesn't give it a broad enough exposure along with the other cities' programs.
And Madam Mayor, just quick follow-up. Thank you, Courtney, for that clarification. I think that's kind of what I was wanting to hear. Some of the concerns that I've heard over the past and still today are, that people have a problem, they don't know who to go to, or they want to have a conversation about things, but they don't feel comfortable having it in a certain setting, even before a problem has occurred. And so that community involvement early on when it comes to discussions, ideas, things that we need to address, I think that having somebody else inviting them into that space that possibly isn't with the police department is just such an important step to take. So thank you.
And then Council President Pro Tem, I think you've got something. Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Courtney. The one thing I would add is for there to be a bright line between this office and BPD. I think that's important. I don't know how that worked when we had an ombudsman in place all those years ago. But I know as a community member, it felt like Pierce Murphy was somebody that I knew from the city because there was so much transparency, and it became very clear that it was a standalone entity that was doing what the community wanted that office to do. And so I would just say that there needs to be a bright line between BPD and this office.
Madam Mayor.
Councilmember Bajent, yes.
Thank you. This feedback really is wonderful. The only other thing that I would add to it is sort of a two-pronged set of objectives that are unfortunately kind of in tension with each other, which is I would love to see this office be accountable to the public and to the elected city leadership in a relatively transparent way. People should be able to look at the work of the office and tell what they're doing for our community. At the same time, in an ideal world, I would like this office to be very free of political pressure or political influence. It should have enough autonomy to stand up and do what is right in situations when perhaps the consensus will points in a different direction. And that's tough because the tools that you use for accountability are often the same tools you use to coerce somebody into doing the wrong thing. And so as we move forward with creating the office and creating the sort of boundaries and the zones of discretion that it will have, that's the kind of thing that I'm going to be looking for, because I think it's very important, like I said, that this office be free of the ability to be influenced politically or otherwise, yet also accountable to the public and to the elected leaders.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Madam Mayor, council members, I would also add to this, I'm finding better words now that I'm reading my own slide, which I often do, is the focus on community engagement should also be about the citizen experience. So I can imagine the stress someone goes through to make a complaint about a police officer, particularly if the interaction wasn't comfortable. And so I think we can do a lot with technology and just transparency, what happens if you call this office and what someone can expect, and kind of do a better job of walking people through that. So So I captured everybody's thoughts. So just to step back and overview, as you all know, we just did a large survey of BPD, and there's a high confidence level in our police department, but there's also an increased awareness of the need for accountability and transparency in policing. So we have both. We have a high level of confidence from the community in the department, but also a high interest in ensuring we continue oversight of the department. Our residents have shown that they want a clear understanding of who provides the oversight, how to file a complaint, and then how these complaints are closed. And then just as a side note, the current model we have has been in place for 6 years. And so we just think it's time for an update. Just coincidence, the first police oversight model also lasted 6 years. Must be something about the 6-year mark. Our goals here for community impact, and again, open to your feedback here, is to focus on accountability and transparency, resolving resident complaints, auditing police investigations, provide the public with a clear process, and the closure of cases and analysis of trends, increase the community awareness of the office, more predictable results for residents, and then increase trust both with this office, both with elected officials and BPD as it relates to where the issues overlap. The advantages of the proposed oversight model are the amplification of community outreach. There's clear oversight of the police chief and command staff of BPD. As you can imagine, the higher up in the org chart of BPD you go, the more responsibility and expectation comes with it. The new proposed office would have a clear process for if the complaint was associated with the chief of police or the command staff of the department. It allows for review of a large number of cases. Again, this would be a result of focusing the activities of the office to be in a better position to do trend and pattern analysis, robust reporting practices, and encouraging real-time oversight and open internal affairs investigations. And I think ultimately we want to promote long-term systemic change if we find we have an issue. The highlights is we look for a specialty in reviewing and get investigations conducted by internal affairs to ensure accurate, thorough, and fair investigations, sets a clear process and timelines for the new proposed office's review, mandates audits of all allegations of discriminations and complaints, and then the critical incidents, which are, I pulled up the code so I could be clear about what critical incidents are. It's the use of deadly force, the use of force, or any other police or law enforcement action that results in death or serious bodily injury requiring hospital admission, and then deaths associated with vehicle pursuits, roadblocks, and interceptions, and then collisions. For example, if we had an officer driving a vehicle that resulted in a death. We would be able to do real-time auditing of those incidences, and then this new proposed office would have the opportunity to retain independent investigators depending on the nature of those critical incidents and, of course, the direction of mayor and council. The proposed staffing structure for the new proposed office is a full-time director with administrative support. Another aspect that the city has brought on since this office was created is the integration with TED. So TED is BPD's Training, Education, and Development Division. In fact, the captain who oversees this was sworn in recently, and they will largely occupy the responsibilities regarding officer wellness, diversity and bias training, and leadership development. In your support of creating that division, we believe those responsibilities are better housed in the new division than in the Office of Police Oversight. That doesn't mean that the new proposed office wouldn't advise the training division on recommended policy changes, but there would not be a duplication of effort. And then, as I mentioned before, it would integrate with the Office of Community Engagement, raise the profile, raise the understanding of what happens when you do make a complaint about a police officer. And then it would continue to release independent reports and information to you and the public. And then, so next steps are I'll answer any questions you have and incorporate any additional feedback. And then we'll propose a new ordinance with associated policies and procedures. I want to make clear that we don't want to put every idea in the ordinance, but to do a new ordinance and to follow up with policies and procedures, which will give you a bit more flexibility in the future, and then create the updated job descriptions and begin the hiring process. So with that, I'm happy to stand for questions or collect some more feedback.
Madam Mayor.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Courtney. I guess where I'm at right now, Courtney, is what is the status now in terms how we're addressing these issues that might be coming our way. I don't know what my colleagues on the council, what their experience is with the public reaching out to them, but I have had members of the public reach out to me with troubling information. Most recently, a video of someone who is purported to be a member of our police department placing their knee on the neck of somebody who was being arrested. And this is very recent. I forwarded that on. I have not heard back. Again, I don't know if this is something that my colleagues experience, but I do. And I have forwarded things on to our staff. I don't hear back. I don't know if that's part of the procedure and the policy, but I know as an elected official, when folks reach out to me, I am going to be held accountable for what happens moving forward. So I guess right now, that's what I'm asking is, can we get some clear direction as to what that process is like when we are contacted with complaints from the public related to BPD, and what the steps forward are until we have this new system in place.
Madam Mayor, council member, I will follow up on your question. I don't know. I mean, it's a good question what the council should expect when you facilitate a complaint, what a resident should expect when they make a complaint. I mean, I think it's a similar challenge we're trying to address, but I can follow up specifically when council's either making their own complaint or if you're facilitating the complaint of a constituent.
Well, and I'll jump in here too, Courtney, because you touched on it earlier. When the feedback's been taken for today and staff begins to work on an ordinance, in addition to that ordinance will be policies and procedures that will be reviewed by council. And I believe it's really important to have eyes on those policies and procedures so that we make sure that based on the experience we've had, whether it be, a citizen or a resident sharing with us a complaint about a specific action, asking us how it is that they can go about getting support, or sharing with us an experience, but not being certain about where to head or whether or not they should make a complaint. Those policies and procedures should not only make it clear for us how to serve the public, but also for the public to understand the process. And then community engagement would be involved as well to make that more accessible to the public. So my thinking is that when you return to us with those policies, procedures, it's going to be really important to have done a full review and to provide feedback at that point to make sure that we've covered everything clearly. But if I heard Courtney right, having those separate from an ordinance provides more flexibility. We can get in a little deeper on what we hope to see and then use those as accountability measures for ourselves and the office.
Thank you.
A bit more follow-up, and I appreciate Council President Pro Tem Sanchez's question, because I think it's a really important one. I think it speaks to Councilmember Bajan's concerns that this office not be subject to political pressure. At the same time, that it is accountable and transparent and available. And so I think those policies and procedures are going to be really important. And one of the things I didn't talk very deeply about, but when this office was first formed, it was really under both the mayor and the city council, because we are all accountable for what happens to our citizens with the police department. It's become less so in the last few years. And so I'm also hopeful that as we look at these policies and procedures, we'll all feel more comfortable with our role in where the accountability is, and more comfortable in being able to direct citizens to the appropriate place so that they get their needs taken care of absent pressure from us that could impact the accountability and transparency.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
I think this whole conversation really lays bare what the crux of the issue is, because if a citizen comes to us with a complaint, we should be able to send them to an office where we have confidence that that complaint is going to be fully investigated and that our constituents are going to be taken care of. And if we as council members don't have that confidence, that's where we begin to have a conversation about under which structure we can have that confidence, where we can send our constituents in, probably some of their worst moments to a place where they know that they'll be taken care of. So I think that really illuminates why we're having this conversation in the first place.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if I could ask the council president a question.
Sure.
I don't want to make any assumptions, so I'm gonna repeat back another aspect I haven't heard in terms of mayor and council oversight, which I believe should include a budget review. It hasn't been clear in your budget oversight how this office in particular plays into those discussions. So if I'm seeing head nods, so I'm going to add that to the list as well. Okay, thank you.
Well, and just on that too, I believe that I also heard that in addition to the budget oversight, is council's purview, also clarity on the role of the director of this office in relationship to other directors within the city. And so let's tease that out as well, how, given if this would be a full-time director, what that looks like.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
are we still providing feedback?
Oh, yes. Yeah, go ahead. I
Okay.
don't know if you can hear me. Go ahead.
Okay, great. This isn't my own feedback. It's something that Courtney said earlier, and I want to amplify it because I've been thinking about it as she said it, and it's really important. Whatever we create should reflect the needs of our community specifically, and not a boilerplate or copy and paste from quote unquote national best practices or quote unquote the sort of standard model in cities around the country. We are a unique community with a unique set of needs, and we have the talent and the ability to make a unique tailored product for our community. That's exactly what I think Courtney was saying, but I want to embrace it and amplify it because I think it's the right way to go.
All right, I'm seeing heads nodding.
And
so-
Mayor, maybe just one more question.
Yes, of course.
So I guess, and this is just a matter of process. So as we move forward, and this comes to an ordinance, my question is, what opportunity is there for the community to provide any sort of input or thoughts before we do that? And is it engagement outside of these meetings, or will there be an opportunity for community engagement as we present the ordinance?
Madam Mayor, council member, I'm going to write that down as something you'd like to consider on the list, if that's okay. I don't want to put the cart ahead of the horse as we're working through this, but you will see it again. It's a question in my mind of the timing of the ordinance versus the policies and procedures, which I actually think is where the meat of these changes and where the community will experience this office in the most direct way. But I'll take from your comments, you want that to happen.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, yes, I think I always want to know what I don't know. And I know that from my perspective, my safety, my problem may not be the same as somebody else's. And so I want to make sure that I'm hearing their voices, or that I'm instructing people on how the best way is for them to share that voice and that insight that might be different than my own experience. So yes.
Madam Mayor, a point of clarification is if you are to move forward with an ordinance and we put out the descriptions for a new position, whether we get a new director or current staff within the current office applies for these positions, we want to evolve some of those policies and procedures with the incoming staff. So what you'll probably see is a framework while we fine tune it with, I like the mix of the right staff person and the right policies and procedures and where those two come together. So that's kind of the loose plan.
Madam Mayor.
Council President Pro Tem and then Council President.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank Councilmember Halliburton for bringing that up about ensuring that we have that as we improve this system, that you know, where you've identified that perhaps we need to expand our community engagement. I very much like the idea that as we do this work, that we walk the talk, as it were, and that we invite the community to be a part of this. And I appreciate that we have continued this work beyond the heightened emotion that we experienced last year. I think that does a lot to comfort our community, that they recognize that this is not an issue that we have moved on from, but that it's something that we're digging into deeper to make sure that they're supported. So I very much support the suggestion by Councilmember Halliburton.
Madam Mayor, thank you. I also appreciate, whenever you make a major policy change, asking the community for input is a great idea. I just wanted to make the point to the members of the public who might be listening tonight that our Office of Police Oversight is still open. If you have a complaint, it's still running. As we work through this process, that will continue to be the case. And so just if you do have an issue, don't be shy about bringing it forward, even during this time when we're reviewing how to do this better.
Madam Mayor,
Very important point. Was that Councilmember Thompson?
it was.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a comment. Thank you, Courtney. You can tell you've been doing a lot of research over the last year plus, and it's well represented in what you brought forward. I also appreciate that you've certainly listened to all the comments of my colleagues, and it's well noted. I think I'm very comfortable with moving forward now as well, moving forward with this new process, and look forward to seeing where we go next. Thanks, Courtney.
Excellent. Well, we will have this back before us at some point in the future. You have what you need right now. And if anything else comes up, I'll make sure that Courtney and team connects with council through Elaine, through the president, if staff has additional questions before coming before us next time. Great. Thank you, Courtney. Thank you, team. And we have no executive session, so we're now at recess till 6 p.m. Thanks all.